YouTube? It's Ryan from Movies with Ryan, and we're here with another episode of My Favorite Five. And today's subject is Indiana. And no, it is not Indiana Jones. What we will be looking at is 5 movies that were either filmed in or take place in Indiana. And why Indiana, may you ask? Why the Hoosier State? Because it's my home state, and I figured I'd find 5 movies that I really enjoy, rank them, and give them to you. So let's jump right in with some honorable mentions first, and then we'll break down the top 5 of my list. Alright, we're going to jump right into this with 2 honorable mentions. So these 2 are just on the verge of being on my top 5. First one being A League of Their Own. Now, this movie doesn't really take place in Indiana, but it was filmed in Indiana. The majority of the Racine Bells home games were filmed in Huntingburg, Indiana, and then the main series was actually filmed in my hometown at Bosse Field. So this always has kind of every time I watch it, a very hometown feel. I recognize a lot of the sights. It's a very good movie. If you haven't seen this, check it out. It's great acting, great little story. And then another movie, I was actually going to do this video last week, but I wanted to hold off because while I was doing research for it, I found a movie that I really wanted to check out due to the cast that's in it, and it seemed like a good story. So I went ahead and tried to find it. I picked it up. I watched it. It didn't quite make my top 5, but I really found it to be a good movie. And that is Lonesome Gym. Now this stars Casey Affleck and Liv Tyler, and is actually directed by Steve Buscemi. And it is written by a gentleman that is actually from Goshen, Indiana. And this actually takes place in Goshen, Indiana. And there's a factory that is in here that is actually the writer's parents' factory. So it's kind of all tied into the same thing. But this basically, Casey Affleck comes back from New York because he's broke, doesn't have anybody, comes to move in with his parents, meets Liv Tyler. They have a little one-night fling, and he's super embarrassed. He's down on life, he's depressed, he's unhappy. His brother tries to kill himself, his mom gets arrested. It's a good movie. The only thing that falls flat for me is the acting is a little stiff. And the writing is a little stiff as well. But overall, I enjoyed the movie. But it didn't make my top 5. So let's get into my top 5, starting with number 5. Number 5 of my favorite 5, Indiana, is going to be a 1977 movie from Steven Spielberg that actually takes place in Muncie, Indiana in the opening parts. And that is Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It does star Richard Dreyfuss, which he is Roy Neary. He's an Indiana linesman that has a UFO encounter in the middle of the night. And this movie is great. I remember watching it when I was little. It scared the heck out of me. Of course, he takes a cross-country journey to try to find more information about the aliens. He runs into some scientists at the Devil's Rock. I think it's the Devil's Rock. And they have another encounter. And the aliens come out. They talk to them. They do the little beep, beep, beep. And you see the aliens. But this movie starts off in Indiana. It's an Indiana movie I love. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Moving on to number 4. It's a 1987 movie directed by David Anspaugh that takes place in Hickory, Indiana. And it is the namesake of the state, Hoosiers. Great basketball movie. I'm not really into sports, but this is a very good story. Of course, Gene Hackman is a coach with a checkered past, and then Dennis Hopper is the town drunk, and they team up to coach the basketball team, and they end up taking them to the finals. Now, this is loosely based on the 1954 Milan High School team that participated in the 54 championship. But it's a great story. A little hometown team comes together to do big things. I mean, it's a story of achievement, overcoming the odds, and becoming something great. But if you're a Hoosier, you got to watch Hoosiers. And if you're not a Hoosier, still watch it because it's a great basketball movie. So this is my pick for number 4 of my favorite 5 of Indiana, Hoosiers. Number 3 of my favorite 5 is a 2005 movie directed by David Cronenberg, and it takes place in the fictional town of Millbrook, Indiana. And that will be A History of Violence. If If you've not seen this movie, go see it. It's a great movie. But basically, Vigo he plays Tom, who's a mild-mannered family man that runs a diner and has a run-in with two guys that know who he is, but he doesn't know who they are, and through an act of violence becomes the local hero. The bad guy in this is Ed Harris, and this is a very good, tense thriller, kind of actiony movie. Definitely very David Cronenberg-y, if you know who that is. Little bit of shocking action in it. The opening scene in the diner is very, very good. So if you know what David Cronenberg does, you'll like this movie. If you don't know what David Cronenberg does, I would give this movie a shot. But History of Violence comes in at my number 3 of my favorite 5 of Indiana movies. Number 2 of my favorite 5, 1983, directed by Bob Clark in the fictional town of Holmen, Indiana. A Christmas Story. My favorite Christmas movie. How can you not love this movie? Of course, everybody knows the story. Ralphie wants a Red Ryder BB gun with a compass in the stock and this thing that tells time. And he goes through great lengths to get that thing. And what does he do? He shoots his eye out, like everybody told him throughout the movie. But I love this movie. The father actually does quote Terre Haute and Griffin, Indiana, which Griffin's actually only about 25 minutes away from me, and Terre Haute's probably about 45. So that's really neat. Every time I watch this movie, I really feel like I'm connected to this because it feels really close to home. Christmas Story. He gets a kid to stick his tongue on a cold pole, and it gets stuck. How can you not love this movie? So that is my number 2 for mine out of 5, of my favorite movies of Indiana, A Christmas Story. Coming in at number 1 of my favorite 5 of Indiana, a 1993 movie directed by David Anspaugh, which also did Hoosiers, and this takes place in South Bend, Indiana. Stars Sean Astin as Rudy Rudiger. Of course, everybody hopefully knows this story. Rudiger's a small guy that has big dreams. He wants to go to Notre Dame and play Notre Dame football. And along with his buddy John Favreau, he makes it through Holy Cross College, works with the ground crews of Notre Dame, gets into Notre Dame, and gets to dress for the final game, and he scores the big touchdown. Of course, if anybody knows the true story, that's not quite how it happened, because they do Hollywood up this movie a lot. Now, I really like this movie just because of the story that it tells. You know, determination gets you places. And Rudy Rudiger actually did an inspirational tour back in the mid to late 90s. I want to say like 97, 96 maybe. And he went to different schools and he gave speeches and he talked about the movie, his life, and all that. And I actually got to meet him when he came to our high school. And it was very interesting. Very small guy. Definitely on stature size, not a football player. But big heart, big goals, big things happen. But Rudy is my number 1 pick out of my favorite 5 for movies in Indiana. Rudy. All right, folks, that concludes my favorite 5 of Indiana. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do. It doesn't cost you a thing, and it helps me out. I appreciate everybody that has, and if you would, leave in the comments your home state and one of your favorite movies from that home state. And until I see you again, have a good night.